Hi guys, and welcome to America History Tales. Tonight, where you find yourself standing beneath a wide, darkening Montana sky in the winter of 1881, with snow beginning to whisper across the frozen ground and a wooden stagecoach waiting beside a lonely frontier station. The lantern beside the coach flickers softly, painting warm circles of light against the cold evening air, while the horses stamp their hooves and breathe clouds of steam into the night. You can smell leather, smoke from a nearby stove, and the sharp, clean scent of snow that seems to make the whole world quieter. You're about to climb inside a machine that carries people, letters, dreams, and sometimes desperate hopes across one of the harshest landscapes in America. And yes, before we get too comfortable, you probably won't survive this kind of journey without a very strong coat, a stubborn attitude, and perhaps a little bit of luck. The weather is not interested in your travel plans. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you live. Are you curled up somewhere warm while imagining this frozen frontier road perfect? Now, dim the lights. You step closer to the stagecoach and feel the wooden steps beneath your boots. The coach is not the elegant carriage you might picture from a painting. It is a practical, battered vehicle built for endurance rather than comfort. The leather suspension straps sway gently, and every movement creates a small chorus of squeaks and creaks. You place one gloved hand against the side and feel the rough wood, polished by years of passengers holding on through dusty trails, muddy crossings, and endless miles. The year is 1881, and stagecoaches remain one of the important links connecting scattered communities across the American West. Railroads are expanding quickly, but many regions still depend on stage routes to carry passengers and mail where train tracks have not yet reached. A journey that looks simple on a map can become an exhausting adventure when mountains, rivers, and weather decide to make their own rules. You climb inside and discover the narrow interior waiting for you. The seats are covered with worn fabric, and the space is shared with strangers who are about to become your companions through the night. There is a certain quiet politeness among everyone gathered here. People know that a stagecoach is not a private room. It is a small wooden world where everyone must negotiate elbows, blankets, conversations, and silence. You sit down and adjust yourself carefully. The seat is firm. Very firm. It is the kind of firmness that reminds you 19th century travellers did not have the luxury of soft cushions and climate control. Modern travellers complain when a flight seat feels uncomfortable for 3 hours. You're preparing for hours on a rough road while the wind outside grows colder by the minute. The driver checks the equipment one last time. He examines the harnesses, looks over the horses, and studies the sky. This is not just routine. A skilled stagecoach driver understands that survival depends on noticing small details. A change in wind direction, the colour of clouds, or the condition of the trail can tell a story before the storm even arrives. The passengers around you begin settling into their own thoughts. A businessman protects a small bag of documents. A traveller heading west keeps one hand near a carefully wrapped possession. Someone quietly adjusts a scarf and watches the snowflakes gather on the window. Each person has a reason for being here, and each carries a piece of a larger American story. A quirky little detail from frontier life follows you into this moment. Some travellers carried small personal charms or objects they believed offered protection during dangerous journeys. These items could be anything from religious tokens to handmade keepsakes from family members. They were not official survival equipment, of course. But when you're surrounded by darkness and freezing wind, a small reminder of home can feel almost as valuable as a warm blanket. Outside, the station begins to disappear into the evening. The final conversation fade. The workers move around the coach with practiced efficiency. A lantern swings gently from its hook, making shadows dance across the snow. The world beyond the station feels enormous, empty, and strangely beautiful. You hear the first command from the driver, followed by the movement of horses pulling against the harness. The coach shifts forward slowly. Wood groans, wheels turn. Snow crunches beneath the weight of the vehicle. The journey has officially begun. As you leave the small pocket of warmth behind, you realize how different travel feels in this era. There are no quick messages to tell someone you are delayed. No weather app warning you about changing conditions. No simple way to call for help if the trail disappears beneath a storm. Your connection to the outside world is carried by the skill of the people around you and the strength of the animals moving through the cold. Historians still argue whether stagecoach travel in the late 19th century was viewed more as a symbol of freedom or a reminder of isolation. Some see these journeys as example of adventurous independence, while others emphasize the loneliness and uncertainty faced by ordinary travelers. Perhaps both ideas are true. The same road that offered opportunity could also leave you feeling incredibly small beneath a winter sky. You lean back as the stagecoach continues into the growing darkness. The sounds become familiar. The gentle rocking, the rhythmic movement of the horses, the occasional rattle of equipment. These sounds begin forming a strange kind of frontier lullaby. The snow outside continues falling, soft at first, almost peaceful. You watch the flakes swirl through the lantern glow and think about all the people who travelled similar roads before you. Farmers searching for new opportunities, families moving toward unfamiliar places, workers carrying messages between distant towns. Every mile holds memories from countless journeys. The storm has not yet revealed its full strength, for now, you're simply moving forward, wrapped in layers of clothing, surrounded by strangers, and carried deeper into a landscape where nature still controls the schedule. The station lights grow smaller behind you until they become only a faint glow in the distance. Ahead waits a long road, a frozen night, and a blizzard that will test everything this little wooden coach can endure. But for this moment, you're still at the beginning. You're still listening to the wheels turn. You're still watching the snow fall. And somewhere between the cold window glass and the quiet breathing of your fellow passengers, you begin to understand that this journey is not only about reaching the next station, it is about experiencing the forgotten rhythm of a world that moves slowly, carefully, and sometimes dangerously through the wilderness. The stagecoach settles into its rhythm as the last glow of the station disappears behind you. You feel every movement of the road beneath the wheels. The coach rises slightly over frozen patches, then drops again with a gentle but unmistakable jolt. Your shoulder touches the wooden wall, your boots press against the floor. The people around you shift quietly, each person trying to find a comfortable position in a space that seems to have been designed by someone who never actually had to sit inside it for an entire night. You pull your coat closer and listen. The sounds of the coach become almost musical after a while. The creaking leather straps, the steady breathing of the horses, the soft tapping of snow against the window, the occasional cough from another passenger. It is not silence, but it is a peaceful kind of noise, the sort that fills the empty spaces in your thoughts. Across from you sits a small collection of lives temporarily connected by this journey. The businessman watches the road with a serious expression, perhaps thinking about a deal waiting at the next town. A woman carefully holds a wrapped bundle close, protecting something that matters deeply to her. An older traveller rests his hands on a walking stick and occasionally looks outside, as if measuring the distance between himself and places he remembers. You notice something interesting about stagecoach travel. The people inside are not simply passengers, they are a temporary community. They must cooperate, even if they come from completely different backgrounds. A person with extra blankets might share warmth with someone who forgot proper winter clothing. Someone with experience on the trail might offer advice to a first-time traveller. The coach forces strangers to become neighbours. Of course, becoming neighbours in a tiny wooden box for many hours requires patience. There are no private cabins, no personal entertainment screens, no ability to stretch out comfortably. If someone wants to sleep, everyone else must accept the shifting movements and occasional sounds that come with it. You probably think your last uncomfortable road trip was difficult, but at least you had the option to stop for a snack and adjust the music. In 1881, many stagecoach routes were operated by companies that maintained schedules between towns, often carrying mail, passengers, and supplies. The famous routes of the American West became symbols of connection between isolated settlements. Yet the reality was far less glamorous than popular stories sometimes suggest. Travel could be slow, exhausting, and unpredictable. Roads were often little more than rough trails shaped by weather and repeated use. You look toward the driver's position and imagine the responsibility resting on his shoulders. He is not simply guiding horses. He is reading the landscape. He knows how the coach responds on different ground. He understands when the animals need a slower pace. He watches the weather because the sky itself is part of the road. The horses are powerful animals, but even they have limits. The cold affects them. Deep snow makes every step harder. A good driver treats the animals with care because the success of the journey depends on their strength. There is a quiet partnership between humans, horses, and the machine they pull through the wilderness. A strange little piece of frontier culture follows you into the coach. Some travellers carried pieces of food or small household items not because they needed them immediately, but because familiar objects created comfort during uncertain journeys. A person might bring a favourite recipe, a small sewing kit, or a handmade item from home. In a world where travel meant leaving behind familiar surroundings for days or weeks, ordinary objects could become emotional anchors. The snow outside grows thicker. At first, it looks beautiful. The flakes float through the lantern light like tiny pieces of silver. The landscape becomes softer, almost magical. Trees wear white coats. Fields disappear beneath smooth blankets of snow. The world feels quiet enough that you could imagine you are the only person left on Earth. Then the coach moves into a stronger wind, and the beauty begins showing another side. The sound changes. The gentle tapping on the window becomes a sharper pattern. Snow gathers along the edges of the glass. The driver pulls his coat tighter and leans forward. The horses continue, but their pace becomes more careful. You notice how quickly a peaceful scene can become uncertain. This is one of the great realities of frontier life. Nature is always nearby, and nature does not negotiate. A clear afternoon can become a dangerous night. A familiar trail can vanish beneath drifting snow. A routine trip can become a story remembered for generations. The passengers begin speaking more quietly. Conversations that started with confidence become shorter. People glance outside more often. Everyone is aware of the weather. even if nobody wants to say too much about it. There is a special kind of tension that comes from waiting. You're not facing the worst moment yet. You are simply aware that something might happen. The imagination begins filling the empty spaces. You wonder how long the storm will last. You wonder what the road ahead looks like. You wonder how far away the next shelter might be. Historians still argue whether stagecoach journeys created stronger social connections among travellers or simply forced temporary cooperation between people who would otherwise never meet. Some scholars emphasize the shared experiences that shaped frontier communities, while others point out that many passengers remained strangers once the journey ended. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between those ideas. A few hours together can create a surprising sense of familiarity. Even among people who may never meet again, you settle deeper into your seat and allow yourself to become part of the movement. The coach rocks gently. The cold remains outside. The warmth inside is limited but precious. Every blanket, every shared word, and every small gesture matters more than it would in a comfortable modern journey. The hours begin stretching ahead. The station behind you is now only a memory. The trail in front of you disappears into darkness and snow, yet for now. The coach continues forward. You listen to the wheels, the horses, and the voices around you. You're no longer simply someone watching history from a distance. You're sitting inside it, feeling the cold through the wooden walls and hearing the same sounds that countless travellers heard before you. The night has only begun. The stagecoach continues deeper into the winter night, and the small station that offered warmth only a short while ago becomes nothing more than a fading memory behind you. You glance back through the frosted window and see the last lantern glow disappearing between the falling snowflakes. It feels strange how quickly a place can vanish. One moment there is a stove burning, a roof overhead, and voices surrounding you. The next, there is only darkness, open land, and the steady movement of the coach carrying you forward. You feel the change immediately. The road no longer passes near buildings or fences. The signs of civilization become fewer with every mile. A small wooden marker disappears beneath snow. A distant chimney becomes invisible. Even the sounds of human activity are replaced by the natural rhythm of the wilderness. Inside the coach, everyone becomes quieter. The early excitement of beginning the journey has faded. People are no longer introducing themselves or exchanging casual stories. Instead, they settle into the reality of the road. This is a shared understanding among travellers. The journey itself has become the main focus. You pull your coat around your shoulders and notice how the warmth inside the coach depends on everyone working together. A closed window keeps out the wind, but it also traps the smells of leather, wool, and old wood. The air carries the scent of travel. It smells like horses outside, smoke from earlier fires, and the belongings people have packed for their uncertain destinations. A stagecoach is a fascinating little world because it carries pieces of ordinary life across extraordinary distances. Someone may have a letter from home tucked safely in a pocket. Someone else may carry tools for a new job. Another passenger may be travelling toward a place they have never seen before. Every item inside the coach has a story attached to it. During this period, the American West is changing quickly. Settlements are growing, railroads are expanding, and new communities are forming across territories that were once considered extremely remote. In the late 19th century, transportation networks were essential for connecting these scattered places. Stagecoaches helped bridge the distance between communities that were still waiting for easier forms of travel. You look outside and understand the challenge. The distance between towns is not just a number on a map. It is cold air against your face when you step outside. It is a trail hidden by snow. It is the knowledge that a small delay can become a serious problem. The driver continues with careful attention. Every turn requires judgment. Every hill requires patience. The horses know the trail, but they cannot explain what they sense. They respond to the driver's guidance and to the conditions beneath their feet. A skilled driver listens to them through movement, sound, and behavior. The passengers begin adjusting to the motion. Some people manage to rest, others simply stare through the window and watch the endless landscape. You notice how the falling snow changes your sense of time without familiar landmarks. Minutes feel longer. The journey becomes measured by sounds and sensations instead of clocks. There is a strange comfort in this slower pace. Modern life often fills every quiet moment with noise. Here, there is only the coach, the storm, and your own thoughts. You have nowhere else to be and nothing else to do except experience the journey. A quirky detail from 19th-century travel is that some stage travellers carried small containers of personal remedies, including homemade mixtures meant to soothe common problems like tiredness or discomfort from travel. These were not modern medicines, and many had questionable effectiveness, but people relied on familiar preparations when professional help was far away. A tiny bottle or packet from home could represent confidence during a difficult trip. The coach rolls onward, and the landscape grows more isolated. You pass through areas where only scattered ranches or small settlements might exist. The idea of being completely alone begins to feel real if something unexpected happens. Help is not waiting around the corner. The nearest person may be many miles away. Yet there is also beauty in this isolation. The snow-covered hills reflect faint moonlight. The trees stand silently along the trail. The air outside looks almost untouched, as if no one has travelled here before. You understand why people were drawn to the frontier despite its hardships. There is something powerful about entering a place where the horizon seems endless. The passenger beside you whispers about storms they have experienced before. Another person mentions stories of travellers who became lost when weather erased familiar paths. These conversations are not meant to frighten you. They are simply part of the shared knowledge carried by people who live close to nature. Historians still debate whether the movement westward created greater independence for ordinary people or placed them under new forms of uncertainty and hardship. Some researchers focus on the opportunities offered by expanding settlements, while others highlight the difficult realities faced by travellers and families building new lives. The stagecoach journey represents both sides. It carries hope forward, but it also carries risk. You feel the coach slow slightly as the driver studies the trail ahead. The horses continue breathing heavily, their pace steady but cautious. Outside, the snow becomes thicker, and the darkness seems to stretch farther in every direction. The station behind you feels like another world now. The warmth, the voices, and the light have been replaced by the quiet movement of the frontier night. You are no longer between two places. You're suspended somewhere in the middle, travelling through a landscape that demands patience. The wooden walls around you creak softly. The wheels continue turning. The people inside the coach settle into a strange kind of shared silence. Everyone understands the same simple truth. The road ahead is longer than expected. The weather is changing. And this journey is becoming something you will remember For now, you keep moving. You watch the snow fall. You listen to the coach carry you farther into the wilderness. And somewhere ahead, hidden beyond the white horizon, waits the storm that will transform this ordinary stagecoach ride into a story of survival. The storm begins to reveal itself. At first, the snow seems almost gentle, like a quiet curtain falling over the trail. But as the stagecoach moves farther from the last traces of civilization, the wind grows stronger. You feel it pushing against the wooden walls, searching for every tiny opening where cold air can sneak inside. The coach shivers slightly with each stronger gust, and the peaceful beauty outside begins to take on a more serious character. You watch the landscape disappear piece by piece. The distant trees become blurry shapes. The trail that seemed clear only moments ago begins to blend with the surrounding fields. Snow gathers along the road, softening the edges of everything you see. It is as if the wilderness is slowly covering its own footprints inside the coach. The mood changes. Nobody panics. There is no dramatic shouting or sudden chaos. Real hardship often arrives quietly. It enters through small details. A passenger pulls their coat tighter. Someone checks the window latch again. The driver spends longer moments studying the path ahead. The little signs of concern are easy to notice when everyone shares the same cramped space. You understand that the stagecoach is not a fortress. It is a wooden box on wheels surrounded by a vast frozen world. The walls protect you from the worst of the wind, but they cannot stop the cold completely. Your fingers feel stiff inside your gloves. Your boots rest heavily on the floor. Every breath reminds you that winter is sitting just outside the door. The driver adjusts the pace of the horses. Faster is not always better in difficult weather. Rushing can create more problems than it solves. A careful pace allows the animals to conserve energy and gives the driver more time to read the changing trail. One well-established detail from the era is that winter travel in the American West was often affected by sudden weather changes, especially in areas where geography created unpredictable conditions. Mountains, open plains, and long distances between settlements could turn ordinary travel into a serious challenge. People who lived and travelled in these regions developed strong knowledge of seasonal patterns because their safety depended on it. You look toward the front of the coach and imagine the responsibility carried by the driver. Every decision matters. Choosing the wrong path could mean wasting valuable time. Moving too quickly could exhaust the horses. Stopping in the wrong location could expose everyone to even greater danger. The passengers begin conserving their energy without needing to discuss it. Conversations become shorter. Movements become slower. Everyone learns the unspoken rules of surviving an uncomfortable situation. Keep warm. Stay calm. Do not waste resources. Respect the person guiding the journey. A curious detail often overlooked is that many 19th century travellers prepared for discomfort by carrying small practical items that modern travellers rarely consider. Some packed extra cloth, simple sewing supplies, candles, or small tools because a minor problem far from help could become much more serious. A torn piece of clothing was not just an inconvenience. It could mean losing valuable protection from the weather. You look around the coach and realize every passenger is prepared in their own way. Some have brought practical supplies. Others have brought emotional reminders of home. A small photograph, a letter, a familiar object placed carefully inside a bag. These things may seem ordinary, but during a difficult journey, ordinary things become important. Outside, The blizzard strengthens. The sound of the wind becomes the main voice of the night. It moves across the open land with a deep, constant roar. Snow strikes the coach window in waves. The horses continue forward, but their movements are more deliberate now. Each step requires effort. You notice how the storm changes the way you experience the world. Distance becomes uncertain. Direction becomes something you trust rather than something you see. The familiar ideas of front and back, near and far, begin losing meaning when everything outside is white and grey. The driver occasionally calls to the horses, his voice carried away quickly by the wind. The words are calm and controlled. There is experience behind them. This is not his first difficult journey, and he knows fear spreads faster than a storm if people allow it to. The businessman across from you stops looking at his papers. The traveller holding the wrapped bundle keeps it closer. The older passenger with the walking stick closes his eyes for a moment, listening to the sounds around him. Everyone is now connected by the same challenge. Researchers continue to discuss whether frontier travellers viewed severe weather mainly as an unavoidable part of life, or as a challenge that shaped a stronger culture of resilience. Some historians emphasize adaptation and courage, while others point out that many people simply endured hardships because they had limited alternatives. The truth likely includes both ideas. People can be brave while still wishing conditions were easier. You lean back and listen to the coach, the creaking wood, the rattling equipment, and the movement of the horses blend together into a strange nighttime rhythm. It is almost soothing, even with the danger outside. There is something deeply human about finding small moments of comfort in difficult situations. The hours ahead remain uncertain. The station is far behind you. The next shelter is somewhere beyond the storm. The road exists, but the snow is trying its best to hide it. Still, the coach continues. You're carried forward by leather straps, wooden wheels, determined animals, and the steady hands of someone who knows this frozen world better than most. The blizzard surrounds you completely now. The frontier has become a place of wind, snow, and darkness. But inside this small wooden coach, you're not alone. You are sharing the night with strangers who have become companions, travelling together through a storm that will test every person inside the wooden coach. The storm feels both close and distant at the same time. You can hear the wind rushing across the open land, but the walls around you create a small pocket of human warmth. It is not comfortable in the way a modern room is comfortable. There is no soft furniture, no easy space to stretch, and certainly no convenient way to escape the person sitting beside you if they begin telling a very long story. Yet this fragile shelter becomes your entire world for the night. You adjust your position carefully, trying to find a place where your back, shoulders, and legs can all agree to stop complaining. The coach seems determined to remind you of every bump in the trail. Each movement sends a small vibration through the wooden frame. The floor shifts beneath your boots. The windows rattle gently. The ceiling creaks with every uneven section of road. Still, there is comfort in the fact that you are inside. The passengers begin developing small routines to make the hours easier. Someone checks the window covering. Another person rearranges a blanket. The driver's assistant, when possible, watches the condition of supplies and equipment. These simple actions create a feeling of order in a situation where nature has taken control. You notice that survival is often built from ordinary decisions: keeping clothing dry, sharing warmth, saving energy, staying patient. These actions do not look heroic from the outside. but they are the quiet habits that allow people to endure difficult conditions. A well-known fact from 19th-century American history is that stagecoaches were an important method of transportation. Before rail networks reached many remote areas, they connected towns, carried mail, and allowed people to travel across enormous distances. For many communities, these coaches represented a vital connection to the wider world. They were not just vehicles, they were moving links between isolated places. You think about the people who depended on these journeys. A letter carried by stagecoach might contain news from family members far away. A package might contain important supplies. A passenger might be travelling toward a completely new beginning. Every trip carried more than people. It carried pieces of everyday life. The conversation inside the coach slowly returns. At first, voices are quiet because everyone is listening to the storm. Then someone shares a small story. Another passenger responds. The exchange is simple, but it helps the hours pass. You hear memories of previous journeys, descriptions of distant towns, and small observations about frontier life. These conversations are not grand speeches. They are the kind of ordinary discussions people have when they are sharing a difficult moment. Someone jokes about the terrible condition of the seats. Another laughs softly and says the coach builders clearly never considered comfort a priority. You smile because the comment feels accurate. The stagecoach is an impressive achievement, but it was built for survival and usefulness, not relaxation. If someone from the future could suddenly appear inside the coach, they might wonder why anyone would choose such a challenging way to travel. Then again, the people of 1881 might look at modern traffic jams and wonder why anyone willingly sits in a metal box surrounded by thousands of others. A lesser-known custom from frontier travel involved passengers creating small agreements about shared space and behavior. People learned quickly that cooperation mattered. They might decide who had the best position near a window, who could help with supplies, or how to handle disagreements. These unwritten rules helped strangers survive long journeys together. You look around and see these quiet negotiations happening naturally. No one announces them. No official leader explains the rules. Everyone simply understands that a little kindness makes the journey easier. Outside, the blizzard continues. Snow presses against the coach like a living thing trying to enter. The storm has transformed the landscape into something unfamiliar. But inside, small human details remain. The warmth of another person's voice, the sound of someone opening a small package of food, the gentle movement of hands adjusting a coat. You begin to understand that the stagecoach itself is not the only thing protecting you. The passengers are part of the shelter too. The businessman offers a small comment about the weather. The older traveller responds with a story from years earlier. The woman with the wrapped bundle quietly joins the conversation. For a moment, the storm feels slightly farther away. The journey has changed everyone when you first entered the coach. These people were strangers. Now you recognize their voices. You know where they sit. You notice when they become quiet. A shared challenge has created a temporary bond. The question of how these bonds formed is still discussed by historians today. Researchers continue to debate whether frontier travel encouraged genuine community between strangers, or whether these connections were simply practical arrangements created by necessity. Some argue that difficult journeys revealed people's willingness to help one another. Others suggest that cooperation was often a survival strategy rather than a lasting social connection. You listen to the storm and consider both possibilities. Perhaps people do not need years to form a meaningful connection. Sometimes a single difficult night can reveal generosity, patience, and courage. The hours continue moving slowly. You feel tired, but you remain aware of every sound. The horses outside, the wind against the coach, the quiet breathing of passengers resting beside you. You pull the blanket closer and allow your eyes to close for a moment. The rocking motion of the coach creates a strange sense of calm. It is uncomfortable, uncertain, and completely unlike the peaceful bedtime you are enjoying now. Yet there is something almost hypnotic about it. The wooden walls hold back the storm as much as they can. The passengers hold on to their patience. The driver holds on to the trail, and together, this small group continues forward through the frozen night. The stagecoach continues across the frozen trail, and you begin to understand that surviving this journey depends on more than simply enduring the cold. It requires knowledge, patience, and a collection of small skills developed by people who spend their lives moving through difficult landscapes. Every person inside the coach has a role, even if that role is simply staying calm and conserving strength. You imagine the countless travelers who have faced similar roads before you. They learned how to read the sky, how to prepare clothing, how to store supplies, and how to recognize when a journey was becoming dangerous. The frontier was not just a place of wide horizons and adventure. It was also a place where ordinary decisions could have serious consequences. The driver remains focused ahead. He knows the trail is not a simple line across the landscape. It changes constantly. Snow covers familiar marks. Frozen ground affects the wheels. Weather can transform a manageable route into a difficult one within hours. The driver's experience becomes one of the most valuable tools on the journey. You watch his careful movements and notice that he is not fighting the storm. He is working with it. He understands that the weather cannot be defeated. It can only be respected. The horses play an equally important part. They are powerful animals, but they are not machines. They require attention, rest, and careful handling. A thoughtful driver knows when to maintain speed and when to slow down. The animals communicate through their movements, and experienced handlers learn to notice those signals. One important detail from the era is that horses and other working animals were central to transportation in 19th-century America. Before automobiles and widespread modern infrastructure, animals provided much of the power needed for movement, farming, and trade. The success of many journeys depended on the relationship between people and the animals carrying them. You look toward the front and imagine the cold air surrounding the horses. Snow collects on their coats. Their breath rises into the night. They continue forward because they have been trained for this work and because the driver guides them with patience. Inside the coach, passengers also learn survival habits. They avoid unnecessary movement. They keep their belongings organized. They pay attention to the condition of the people around them. Someone who becomes too exhausted or too cold can affect the entire group. The businessman who seemed distant earlier now shares a small piece of food with another passenger. The older traveller explains how to wrap a scarf more effectively against the wind. The woman with the bundle checks that everyone is as comfortable as possible. These are small actions, but on a frozen trail, small actions matter. You notice something about hardship. It often reveals details of human behavior that remain hidden during easier times. People who might ignore one another in a crowded town can become surprisingly cooperative when facing the same challenge. A curious detail from frontier travel is that some people carried small emergency items that seem unusual today, including pieces of rope, extra candles, dried foods. and even specific clothing patches meant for quick repairs. These items were not impressive, but they reflected a practical mindset. Travelers understood that a tiny problem could become a major obstacle when they were far from assistance. You feel the weight of that reality. A broken strap is not just an inconvenience. A lost glove is not just annoying. A damaged piece of clothing or equipment can become a serious concern when the nearest settlement is many miles away. The storm continues pressing against the coach, but the people inside have settled into a routine. They listen, they wait, they conserve energy. The modern world often encourages speed, faster communication, faster travel, faster solutions. But this journey forces you into a slower rhythm. You cannot rush the storm away. You cannot skip the miles. You cannot simply arrive with the touch of a button. Instead, you experience every moment, the sound of the wheels moving over frozen ground, the feeling of cold air finding tiny gaps in the coach, the quiet conversations between passengers, the steady breathing of the horses, the careful attention of the driver. The question of how frontier communities handle these challenges remains unsettled among historians. Some researchers believe these harsh conditions strengthened cooperation and created a culture of practical problem-solving. Others argue that survival depended more on individual preparation and personal experience than on community support. The truth is probably a mixture of both. People relied on themselves, but they rarely succeeded completely alone. You glance around the coach and see evidence of that balance. Each person carries their own supplies and responsibilities, yet everyone benefits from the presence of others. The driver needs passengers to remain calm. Passengers need the driver's knowledge. The entire journey depends on many small contributions working together. The landscape outside remains endless. Snow covers the ground, and the darkness stretches beyond what your eyes can measure. But the coach continues moving, creating a small path through a world that seems determined to erase every sign of human movement. You begin to appreciate the courage of ordinary travelers, not the dramatic courage found in legends, but the quieter kind. The courage to sit in an uncomfortable seat for hours. The courage to trust a stranger's experience. The courage to keep going when the destination feels impossibly far away. The stagecoach rocks gently beneath you. The storm surrounds you. Yet the journey continues because people have learned how to adapt. The frozen trail is not welcoming, but it is familiar to those who understand it, and tonight. For a little while, you're learning its language too. You begin paying closer attention to the person guiding the stagecoach through the storm. Until now, the driver has been a quiet figure at the front of the journey, someone whose voice occasionally reaches you through the wind. But as the snow grows heavier and the trail becomes more difficult, you realize that nearly every person inside the coach is depending on his judgment. The driver sits against the cold air with his eyes fixed ahead. His hands remain steady. His posture shows experience rather than confidence for the sake of appearance. He knows the storm is powerful, and he respects it. There is no foolish belief that skill alone can control nature. Instead, there is careful attention, patience, and a willingness to change plans when necessary. You watch him pause at moments that seem random. He looks toward the trail, he studies the movement of the horses, he listens to the wind. These small decisions create the difference between moving safely and making a mistake. A stagecoach journey is a series of choices. How quickly should the horses travel? When should the coach stop? Which path appears safest? How much time can be spent resting? These questions follow drivers throughout every difficult route. A significant detail from American transportation history is that stagecoach drivers were highly valued professionals because their knowledge of routes and conditions was essential. Many drivers became known for their ability to handle difficult terrain, manage horses, and maintain schedules despite challenging circumstances. Their work required physical strength, local knowledge, and constant awareness. You think about how different this responsibility feels compared with modern travel. Today, a driver may rely on maps, signals, weather reports, and machines designed to assist with nearly every decision. Here, the driver depends heavily on memory and observation. The road is not displayed on a screen. It exists in his mind and in the landscape around him. The driver knows certain landmarks that may now be hidden beneath snow. He recognizes changes in the ground beneath the wheels. He understands how the horses respond when the conditions become harder. The passengers slowly notice this too. Their trust grows with every careful adjustment. When the coach slows, nobody complains. When the driver chooses a different direction, nobody questions him. They understand that his decisions are not delays, they are protection. Inside the coach, people continue their quiet survival routines. Blankets are adjusted, coats are tightened, food is shared carefully. Everyone saves energy because nobody knows how many hours remain before reaching shelter. You notice that the storm has changed the meaning of time. At the beginning of the journey, the next stop felt like a clear destination. Now, the focus is simply on the next stretch of trail, the next hill, the next safe moment. A lesser-known practice among some frontier travelers was paying close attention to natural signs when traveling through unfamiliar areas. People observed wind direction, animal behavior, cloud patterns, and changes in the landscape. These observations were not always scientifically accurate by modern standards, but they represented generations of practical experience. When formal information was unavailable, people relied on what they could see and hear. You look outside and see the world transformed. The trail seems almost erased. Snow swirls across the ground, creating moving patterns that make it difficult to judge distance. Trees appear and disappear through the storm. The horizon feels much closer and much farther away at the same time. The driver does not rush. That is perhaps the most impressive part. He understands that patience is a tool. Every mile gained safely is better than several miles gained recklessly. The storm may be frustrating, but frustration does not make the road easier. The passengers begin respecting the quiet discipline of the journey. The businessman, who once seemed focused only on his destination, now watches the driver with appreciation. The older traveller occasionally nods, recognizing familiar decisions. Even the quieter passengers understand that they are witnessing a careful performance of skill. Experts continue to discuss whether stagecoach drivers should be remembered mainly as transportation workers or as important figures in the development of frontier communities. Some historians highlight their technical abilities and their role in connecting distant settlements. Others suggest that their importance came from the trust placed in them during uncertain journeys. Either way, the driver represents something larger than simply moving a vehicle from one place to another. He represents the human ability to navigate uncertainty. You listen to the sounds coming from the front of the coach. The driver's occasional commands blend with the wind. The horses respond. The wheels continue turning. The entire system works together through cooperation. For a moment, You imagine what the driver sees, not just snow and darkness, but a familiar landscape hidden beneath the storm. He sees possibilities where others see confusion. He sees a path where others see only white emptiness. The coach rises over a difficult section of trail, and everyone inside holds on. The movement is uncomfortable, but there is no fear in the way people respond now. They have adapted to the journey. They have learned its rhythm. The storm remains powerful. The night remains long. But the person at the front continues making careful choices. One moment at a time, you settle back into your seat and listen. The wheels move, the horses pull, the driver guides, and the stagecoach continues its slow passage through the frozen wilderness. The night continues, and as the stagecoach pushes deeper into the storm, your attention shifts from the road ahead to the small details inside the coach. Hard journeys reveal the customs people carry with them. In a comfortable setting, a person's habits may seem ordinary and unnoticed, but inside this crowded wooden shelter, every action tells a story about the world these travellers come from. You notice the little rituals that appear as the hours pass. Someone touches a small object tucked safely inside a coat pocket before looking outside. Another passenger carefully rearranges a bundle of belongings, making sure everything stays dry. A traveller quietly repeats a familiar phrase before settling down again. These are not dramatic acts. They are personal habits that provide comfort when the world outside feels uncertain. Frontier life was filled with routines shaped by distance, weather, and limited access to services. People learned to make use of what they had. They repaired items instead of replacing them. They shared knowledge because information could mean the difference between comfort and hardship. They developed habits that might seem unusual today, but made perfect sense in their own time. One important reality of life in the late 19th century was that many rural communities had limited access to professional medical care. Doctors were often far away, especially in isolated areas of the West. Because of this, families and travellers relied heavily on home remedies, practical knowledge, and traditional treatments passed between generations. You think about the passengers around you and imagine the small collections of knowledge they carry. One person may know how to prepare a simple remedy for a common illness. Another may understand how to repair clothing quickly. Someone else may have learned which plants were useful in certain situations. These skills were part of everyday survival. A small but fascinating detail from frontier life is that travellers sometimes carried personal comfort items that had little practical value but great emotional meaning. A small piece of fabric from home, a handwritten note, or a familiar scent could make a difficult journey feel less lonely. In an age before instant communication, these objects helped people maintain a connection to the places and people they had left behind. You look around the coach and realize that every passenger has created a tiny portable version of home. Their bags contain memories. Their coats hold traces of familiar places. Their conversations reveal the lives waiting beyond this storm. The stagecoach itself carries traditions too. Travellers have learned certain manners because sharing space requires cooperation. People avoid unnecessary arguments. They offer assistance when someone struggles. They understand that everyone is tired and uncomfortable. Of course, not every frontier habit was practical or based on accurate information. People in the 19th century lived in a world where scientific knowledge was still developing, and many ideas about health, weather, and protection came from a mixture of observation, tradition, and belief. An overlooked habit from the period was the use of various homemade mixtures and protective practices believed to improve health or prevent problems during travel. Some travellers carried herbal preparations, special foods, or personal charms. While some methods had useful practical effects, others reflected cultural beliefs rather than proven results. Still, these traditions reveal how people tried to create a sense of control in uncertain situations. The storm outside makes you understand why such beliefs mattered. When nature feels overwhelming, people search for anything that provides reassurance. A small charm may not change the weather, but it may change how someone feels while facing it. You listen as the passengers exchange stories. The older traveller mentions a journey where someone believed a certain routine brought good luck. Another passenger laughs gently and shares a different tradition from their own hometown. Nobody seems eager to prove who is right. These stories are part of the social fabric of travel. The question of how much these beliefs shaped frontier decisions remains debated among historians. Some researchers suggest that customs and folk practices helped people cope with uncertainty and build community connections. Others argue that practical experience and necessity were the stronger forces guiding everyday choices. The answer is complicated because human behavior rarely comes from a single influence. You watch snow continue to gather outside and think about how different life feels in this era. Today, many problems can be solved quickly with technology. A question can be answered instantly. A doctor can be contacted from almost anywhere. A weather warning can arrive before the storm reaches you. Here. Knowledge moves at the speed of people. It travels through conversations. It travels through families. It travels through travellers sitting together in a wooden coach. The passengers are not just carrying supplies, they are carrying memories, traditions, and lessons collected over years of experience. You notice the driver's voice again from outside. He calls to the horses, and the coach responds with another slow movement forward. The storm has not stopped the journey. It has simply changed the way everyone experiences it. The strange customs of this frontier world are not strange to the people living within it. They are solutions created for a particular moment in history. They come from a time when people had to depend more on one another, on their own skills, and on careful observation of the world around them. You settle back and let the sound surround you. The quiet conversations, the shift in blankets, the creaking wood, the distant wind. Every small detail inside the coach reminds you that history is not only found in famous events and important names. Sometimes it is found in the ordinary actions of people trying to stay warm, stay calm, and reach tomorrow and tonight. Inside this storm-covered stagecoach, you are sharing those ordinary moments. Midnight arrives quietly. You do not notice the exact moment when the night becomes the deepest part of the journey. There is no announcement. No clear signal that the darkest hours have begun. The change happens slowly. The voices inside the stagecoach become softer. The lantern light feels warmer because the world outside has become colder. The storm settles around you like a vast blanket of snow and wind. The coach continues moving through the darkness. You listen to the familiar sounds that have followed you for hours. The wheels turning beneath the wooden frame, the harnesses shifting with each movement, the horses breathing into the frozen air, the occasional crack of the driver's voice as he guides the team forward. These sounds have become the rhythm of the night. You look through the window, but there is little to see. The landscape that seemed so open earlier has almost disappeared completely. Snow moves across the ground in waves, and the darkness beyond the glass feels endless. It is difficult to tell where the road ends and the wilderness begins. The storm has created a world of shadows. Inside the coach, Everyone has adapted to the conditions. People have stopped trying to be comfortable and have started focusing on endurance. There is a difference between the two. Comfort is about making a situation pleasant. Endurance is about making it possible to continue. You pull your coat closer and feel the weight of the long night. Your body wants rest, but your mind remains alert. Every unusual sound catches your attention. Every change in movement makes you wonder what is happening outside. This is the strange experience of traveling through a severe winter storm. You are tired, but you cannot fully relax. You're safe for the moment, but you know that safety requires constant attention. A defining feature of life in the 1880s was the challenge of distance. Many communities across the American West remained separated by large stretches of land, and reaching another town could require long, difficult journeys. Transportation systems were improving, but geography still controlled daily life in many places. You think about how different this journey feels compared with travel today. Modern travelers often measure distance by time on a schedule. Here, distance is measured by effort. It is measured by the strength of the horses, the condition of the trail, and the patience of everyone inside the coach. The passengers begin sharing quieter conversations. Perhaps they're too tired for long stories now. Instead, they exchange short comments that carry more meaning than they might have earlier. Someone asks if the storm appears stronger. The driver answers briefly. Someone mentions the hope of reaching shelter. Another passenger responds with calm reassurance. These simple words create a sense of connection. You notice how people communicate differently during difficult moments. There is less interest in unnecessary conversation. People focus on what matters. Are we moving safely? Are we staying warm? Is everyone managing? A fascinating but lesser-known detail about 19th century travel is that passengers often learn to organize themselves around limited space and resources. Sharing a small area for many hours required unwritten rules about noise, belongings, and personal boundaries. Travelers developed a kind of temporary etiquette because cooperation made uncomfortable journeys easier. You see this etiquette happening around you. Nobody takes more space than necessary. Nobody ignores another person's discomfort. Even small acts, like shifting a blanket so someone else can rest, become meaningful. Outside, the storm continues without concern for the people traveling through it. Snow does not care about schedules. Wind does not care about plans. The wilderness remains completely indifferent, yet humans continue moving through it. That may be one of the most interesting parts of the story. People do not overcome nature by becoming stronger than it. They survive by understanding it, respecting it, and adapting to its challenges. Academic discussions often focus on whether frontier resilience came mainly from individual determination or from communities learning to support one another. Some historians emphasize the independent spirit often associated with the American West. Others point to cooperation, shared knowledge, and mutual assistance as the real foundation of survival. The Stagecoach journey shows both sides. Every passenger must endure personally, but nobody succeeds completely alone. You close your eyes for a moment and feel the movement of the coach. The rocking is uneven, but strangely calming. The storm creates a constant background sound, almost like waves against a distant shore. It reminds you that history is not always dramatic. Sometimes history is quiet. Sometimes it is a group of tired people sitting together in the middle of nowhere. Sometimes it is a driver holding the reins while snow covers the trail. Sometimes it is a passenger staying awake because another person needs reassurance. The hours pass slowly, Midnight feels like a place rather than a time. It is the moment when the journey seems longest, when the destination feels farthest away, and when everyone must rely on patience. You imagine the landscape beyond the coach, white fields stretching into darkness, trees covered in snow, frozen paths hidden beneath drifting layers, the entire frontier transformed into a silent world. But the stagecoach remains a small moving island of human warmth. The lantern continues glowing, the passengers continue waiting, the horses continue pulling, and you continue forward, deeper into the blizzard, carried by the steady determination of people who know that every storm eventually reaches an end. The storm continues outside, but inside the stagecoach. The long hours create something unexpected. The passengers begin sharing more of themselves. Perhaps it is the darkness. Perhaps it is the knowledge that everyone inside the coach is experiencing the same uncertain night. Whatever the reason. The strangers who began this journey together now start revealing small pieces of their lives. You sit quietly and listen. The businessman across from you is the first to speak at length. Earlier, he seemed focused only on his destination and the documents he carried. Now, with the storm surrounding the coach, his thoughts turn toward the reason he is travelling. He explains that he is heading toward a growing town where new opportunities are appearing. His voice carries a mixture of confidence and nervousness, because every new beginning requires leaving something familiar behind. You understand that feeling. The frontier attracts people because it represents possibility. But possibility always comes with uncertainty. A person can travel hundreds of miles searching for a better future and still wonder if they made the right decision. The older traveller with the walking stick listens carefully before sharing his own story. He speaks about previous journeys, towns that have changed, and places that exist now only in memory. His stories are not filled with dramatic adventures. Instead, he remembers ordinary moments, a meal shared after a difficult day, a conversation with someone who later became a lifelong friend, a small kindness from a stranger when he needed help. These are the details that survive. You realize that history is often preserved through simple memories. Famous events may appear in books, but everyday experiences are carried through stories told between people. The woman holding the wrapped bundle eventually joins the conversation. She speaks about family, travel, and the challenges of moving through unfamiliar territory. She does not describe the journey as easy. Nobody inside the coach would believe that. Instead, she explains that difficult moments often reveal what people are capable of handling. A major development of the 19th century was the rapid growth of transportation networks that connected distant regions of the United States. Railroads expanded, roads improved in some areas, and communities became increasingly connected. Yet many travellers still relied on stagecoaches, especially where newer transportation systems had not reached. The stagecoach remained a bridge between isolated places and the wider world. You look around the coach and see that bridge in action. Every passenger represents a different reason for travel. Business, family, opportunity, necessity, curiosity. The stagecoach brings these separate lives together for a brief moment. The conversation becomes warmer as the night continues. Someone makes a small joke about the coach being less comfortable than expected. Another passenger laughs and says they will appreciate any chair with a soft cushion after this journey. The laughter's quiet, but it changes the atmosphere. For a moment, the blizzard feels less powerful. A forgotten habit from frontier travel was the sharing of personal stories during long journeys as a way to pass time and build trust. before modern entertainment and constant communication. Conversation was one of the main ways people connected while traveling. Stories provided distraction, but they also helped strangers understand one another. You notice that these stories are doing more than filling the silence. They are creating a temporary community inside the coach. The driver, still focused on the trail, occasionally hears parts of the conversation. He does not join often, but there is a quiet familiarity between him and the passengers now. Everyone understands that they are part of the same experience. The meaning of these shared journeys remains a subject of discussion among historians. Some researchers view travel stories from the frontier as evidence of strong social connections formed through hardship. Others believe these moments were temporary relationships created by circumstance rather than lasting bonds. The truth depends on the people involved. Some passengers may never think about each other again, while others may remember a single stormy night for the rest of their lives. You think about the people sitting around you. Their names may disappear from records. Their individual stories may never become famous. But at this moment, they are real. They are tired. They are hopeful. They are worried. They are human. The coach continues through the storm. The businessman wraps his documents more carefully. The older traveller closes his eyes while still smiling slightly. The woman checks her bundle once more. Each person returns to quiet reflection. You listen to the sounds around you and feel the strange comfort of shared experience. The storm outside is still dangerous, but inside the coach there is something stronger than fear. There is understanding. An unexpected detail from everyday life in this era was how often travellers relied on strangers for information. A person arriving from another town might bring news, warnings, advice about roads, or updates about conditions ahead. In places where communication was slow, travellers themselves became moving sources of knowledge. You imagine how valuable these conversations were. A traveller could learn which routes were safer, which towns offered shelter, and what challenges might appear along the way. Every person carried information collected from previous miles. Tonight, the passengers are doing the same thing. They're sharing pieces of the world with one another. The storm continues, but the coach feels different now. It is no longer simply a vehicle carrying strangers through snow. It is a small gathering of people connected by one difficult night. You settle back and listen as the voices slowly fade again. The stories have been told. The memories have been shared. The road continues waiting. Outside, the blizzard stretches across the frontier. Inside, the passengers hold on to warmth, patience, and the knowledge that they are facing the night together. The stories inside the stagecoach slowly fade into silence, but the world outside grows more intense. You become aware that the wooden walls around you are protecting you from more than cold air. Beyond the coach waits a landscape transformed by darkness, snow, and uncertainty. The blizzard has hidden the familiar world. The trail that seemed like a clear path earlier is now difficult to recognize. Snow covers marks left by previous travelers. Drifts form where the wind chooses to place them. The same landscape that looked peaceful during calmer weather has become a maze of white shadows. You watch the driver carefully. His attention never leaves the road ahead. He understands that the greatest dangers are not always dramatic. Sometimes the most serious problems arrive quietly. A hidden patch of ice, a section of trail covered by deep snow, a piece of equipment weakened by the cold, a moment of exhaustion after too many hours awake. These are the challenges that demand constant awareness. Life during this period was shaped by the fact that many travellers had to depend heavily on local knowledge and personal preparation. In the 19th century, large areas of the American West remained difficult to cross, and travellers often faced conditions where assistance was far away. Weather, geography, and distance could turn a routine journey into a serious test. You feel the weight of that reality as the coach moves forward. Today, many people can travel through dangerous conditions with the help of advanced systems designed to provide information and assistance. Here, the passengers have only the skills of the driver, the strength of the horses, and the supplies they brought with them. The horses continue pulling through the snow, but you notice the effort required. Their movements are slower, their breathing is heavier. The driver responds by adjusting the pace. He knows that pushing too hard can create problems later. The passengers understand this too. Nobody asks why the coach is moving slowly. Nobody complains about the lost time. The storm has changed everyone's priorities. Arriving safely matters more than arriving quickly. You look outside and imagine the dangers hidden beyond the window. The open plains that once represented freedom now represent exposure. The trees that once seemed beautiful now create uncertainty. The empty spaces between settlements that once looked peaceful now remind you how far away help might be. A small piece of forgotten frontier culture involved the careful preparation travellers made before leaving a settlement. People often checked equipment repeatedly, stored extra supplies, and listened closely to local advice. These preparations were not signs of fear. They were signs of respect for conditions that could change quickly. You notice similar preparation inside the coach. Every passenger has something useful. Every person has made choices about what to bring. Their belongings tell stories about what they considered important enough to carry across the wilderness. The storm creates another challenge that is less obvious. It affects the mind. Hours of uncertainty can change how people think. A person may begin imagining problems that have not happened. A small sound may feel larger than it is. A delay may seem endless. Staying calm becomes part of survival. The driver appears to understand this. His steady behaviour helps everyone remain focused. He does not ignore the danger, but he doesn't allow fear to control the journey. Different scholars have interpreted frontier survival in contrasting ways. Some believe the ability to endure difficult conditions created a culture of independence and confidence. Others argue that survival stories often overlook the importance of cooperation, resources, and circumstances beyond individual control. The historical record leaves room for disagreement because endurance can involve both personal strength and support from others. You consider the people around you and see examples of both. The driver uses his own knowledge and experience, but he also depends on the passengers staying calm. The passengers prepare individually, but they also rely on the driver and the horses. Nobody survives this journey completely alone. The storm continues testing the coach. A sudden gust pushes against the side, making the wooden frame groan. Everyone becomes quiet for a moment. The sound passes, and the journey continues. You realize that fear is not always a sign of weakness. Sometimes fear is simply awareness. The people inside this coach are not fearless. They know the conditions are dangerous. They understand what could happen, but they continue because they must. That quiet determination feels more realistic than the dramatic courage often shown in stories. There are no grand speeches, no perfect heroes, just tired people making careful decisions. You notice how the smallest actions matter. A passenger offering encouragement, someone sharing a warmer blanket, the driver slowing down at the right moment, the horses responding to guidance. History is often remembered through major events, but moments like this reveal another side of the past. They show how ordinary people handled uncertainty before modern conveniences existed. The coach continues moving through the frozen night. Outside, the blizzard hides the road and surrounds the travellers with danger inside. Everyone listens closely. The wheels turn, the horses pull, the driver watches, and you remain surrounded by the strange feeling of being both incredibly vulnerable and surprisingly protected at the same time. The wilderness is powerful, but the people inside this small wooden coach are determined to keep moving. The night feels longer now. You have travelled for so many hours that time no longer feels like something measured by a clock. Instead, you measure it by the warmth left in your hands, the fading conversations around you, and the steady rhythm of the stagecoach moving through the snow. The storm continues outside, but inside the coach, everyone has become focused on one simple goal: stay warm. It sounds easy when spoken aloud, but in this frozen landscape, warmth is something you must protect carefully. Every movement uses energy. Every opening of the door allows cold air to enter. Every hour spent in the storm requires patience. You adjust your clothing and notice how much attention people in this era give to small details. A properly wrapped scarf matters. A well-fitted coat matters. Dry clothing matters. These smallest choices can determine how comfortable or uncomfortable the journey becomes. The passengers have learned to conserve what they have. They do not waste movement. They do not use supplies carelessly. They understand that the journey is not finished simply because they have already travelled a great distance. A major feature of daily life in the 19th century was the importance of practical skills. Many people relied on abilities that modern conveniences have reduced, such as repairing clothing, preserving food, maintaining tools, and preparing for changing weather for travellers crossing remote areas. These skills were not hobbies, they were necessary parts of life. You look around the coach and see those skills in action. A passenger carefully repairs a small problem with a piece of clothing. Another checks the condition of a bag. Someone offers advice about keeping hands warm. These actions seem ordinary, but they reveal a culture built around preparation. The coach itself becomes a lesson in patience. There is no shortcut through the storm. The passengers cannot make the road disappear. They cannot ask the weather to become more convenient. They can only respond to the situation in front of them. You think about how different this mindset feels from modern life. Today, many problems are solved through speed and technology. A delayed journey can be updated instantly. A difficult route can be changed with a few instructions. A person can often avoid discomfort with enough planning. Here, planning helps, but it cannot control everything. You must wait. You must endure. You must trust. A forgotten habit from winter travel was the careful use of shared warmth. Travellers often arranged themselves in ways that reduced exposure and made the best use of limited protection. Blankets, clothing layers, and body positioning became important tools during long periods in cold conditions. You notice this quietly happening around you. People sit closer together than they might under normal circumstances. They share small comforts. They understand that survival sometimes depends on cooperation. The woman with the wrapped bundle checks on the other passengers. The older traveller offers another story, perhaps because he knows conversation keeps spirits alive. The businessman stops thinking about his destination for a while and simply focuses on the present moment. The storm outside has created a strange equality. Inside this coach, everyone experiences the same cold. Everyone hears the same wind. Everyone waits for the same sunrise. An unexpected detail from frontier life was that travellers often developed strong emotional connections with simple comforts, because difficult conditions made ordinary things feel valuable. A warm drink, a dry blanket, a familiar voice, or a small piece of food could provide a sense of security during uncertain moments. You understand this now. The sound of another person speaking calmly feels comforting. The small glow of the lantern feels important. The wooden walls of the coach feel almost precious. You're not surrounded by luxury, but you are surrounded by reminders of human effort. The interpretation of frontier endurance remains a topic of discussion among historians. Some scholars emphasize the strength of individual determination, suggesting that people survived because they developed independence and resilience. Others point toward networks of support, arguing that cooperation and shared knowledge were equally important. The evidence suggests that both personal effort and community connection shape survival. You look around the coach and see that balance clearly. The driver has knowledge gained through experience. The passengers have supplies prepared before the journey. The horses provide the strength to continue. Everyone contributes something. The hours before dawn become the most challenging, not because the storm is necessarily worse, but because tiredness becomes heavier. The body begins asking for rest. The mind begins searching for signs that the journey is almost over. You keep listening. The wheels continue, the wind continues. The coach continues. There's a strange calm that appears when people accept what they cannot change. The passengers are still concerned, but they are no longer fighting the reality of the storm. They have adapted to it. You settle back and allow yourself to follow the movement of the coach. The rocking becomes familiar. The sounds become predictable. The storm becomes a constant presence rather than a sudden threat. Outside, the frontier remains frozen and vast. Inside, a small group of travellers protects the fragile warmth they have created together. They do not know exactly when the storm will end. They do not know what the trail will look like at sunrise. But they know they have made it this far, and for now, that is enough. The darkest part of the night begins to loosen its grip, but morning still feels far away. You have reached the hours when exhaustion becomes its own challenge. The storm outside continues. The coach continues moving, and the passengers continue waiting for the first signs of daylight. This is the part of the journey when patience matters most. You're no longer filled with the energy of the beginning. The excitement of leaving the station has disappeared. The fear of the worst moments has settled into something quieter. Now there is only endurance. You shift in your seat and feel every mile that has passed. Your body remembers every bump in the trail. Your shoulders feel heavy. Your eyes want to close. Yet every time the coach moves differently, your attention returns. The passengers around you are experiencing the same struggle. The businessman, once focused on his plans, now appears completely absorbed in simply making it through the night. The older traveller sits quietly, conserving his strength. The woman with the wrapped bundle keeps checking that everything is secure. Nobody needs to explain the situation. Everyone understands. One reality faced by people of this generation was that long-distance travel required accepting uncertainty. Roads, weather, and transportation systems were not always predictable, especially in remote areas. a person could prepare carefully and still find themselves facing conditions beyond their control. You think about the difference between preparation and certainty. Preparation gives people tools, it gives them confidence, but it does not remove every risk. The driver knows this better than anyone. He continues watching the trail, making adjustments whenever necessary. His movements are slower now, but his attention remains sharp. Experience has taught him that the final hours of a difficult journey can be just as important as the beginning. Fatigue can create mistakes. Distraction can create problems. A moment of carelessness can undo hours of careful work. You watch him maintain the same steady focus he had when the journey began. The storm has not defeated him, but it has demanded respect. Inside the coach, the passengers find small ways to encourage one another. A quiet word, a shared glance, a reminder that the destination is getting closer. These moments may seem simple, but they reveal something important about human behavior during hardship. People often survive difficult experiences not because they feel powerful, but because they continue despite feeling tired and uncertain. A curious custom rarely mentioned today involved travellers using small signs of routine to maintain calm during difficult journeys. Some people followed familiar habits before resting, eating, or preparing for another stretch of travel because repetition created a sense of stability. When everything around them felt unpredictable, familiar actions provided comfort. You notice these routines now. Someone checks a coat button, someone organises a bag, someone adjusts their position and settles again. The actions are small, the meaning is large. The storm outside has made everyone appreciate things they might normally ignore. A warm seat, a dry piece of clothing, a friendly voice, a little patience from another person. You look through the window and notice that the darkness has changed slightly. It is not daylight yet, but the blackness of midnight has softened. The sky seems less endless. The snow appears a little clearer. Hope arrives slowly. It does not appear suddenly like a lantern being lit. It comes quietly, almost unnoticed. A small change in the air, a slight difference in the colour of the horizon, a feeling that the hardest part may be passing. The way people remember these moments has been interpreted differently by historians. Some researchers view frontier endurance stories as examples of personal courage and determination. Others argue that these accounts should also focus on the resources, relationships, and circumstances that allowed people to continue. The historical picture is complicated because survival is rarely the result of one person's effort alone. You consider the passengers again, the driver's skill matters. The horse's strength matters. The preparation of the travellers matters. The support between strangers matters. The journey exists because all these pieces come together. You begin thinking about the story you will carry away from this night. Not simply that a stagecoach crossed a blizzard, that is only the surface. The deeper story is about ordinary people adapting to an extraordinary situation. They were not searching for adventure. They were travelling because life required movement. They were carrying responsibilities, hopes, and memories. They were people trying to reach the next place. The coach moves forward another mile, then another. The storm seems slightly less aggressive now, though the cold remains. The passengers are not celebrating yet. They know better than to assume the danger has completely passed. But the feeling inside the coach has changed. The waiting is becoming a little easier. The unknown is becoming slightly more familiar. You rest your head back and listen to the sounds that have accompanied you all night. The wheels, the horses, the wind. These sounds are no longer unfamiliar. They have become the soundtrack of the journey. The first hints of morning are approaching. The long hours before sunrise are almost complete, but before the light fully returns, there are still miles to travel, and the stagecoach must continue through the final stretch of the frozen trail. The storm does not disappear all at once. After hours of wind, snow, and darkness, the change begins quietly. You notice it first in the sound. The fierce roar outside the coach becomes softer. The gusts that pushed against the wooden walls with such force begin to lose their strength. The snow still falls, but it no longer feels like an endless force surrounding the entire world. You open your eyes and look toward the window. The darkness is becoming lighter, not bright, not warm, but different. The first signs of morning arrive slowly across the frozen landscape. The sky changes from deep black to shades of grey. The shapes outside become easier to recognize. Trees return from the shadows. The trail begins to appear again beneath the layers of snow. After spending so many hours surrounded by uncertainty, even a small change feels enormous. The passengers notice it too. Nobody celebrates loudly. Everyone is too tired for that. Instead, there is a quiet understanding that something has shifted. The worst of the storm may be behind you. You listen as the coach continues forward. The wheels still struggle through difficult sections of trail. The horses still work hard. The driver still watches carefully. The journey is not finished. But the feeling inside the coach is different now. There is relief. A defining part of the American West during this era was the constant adjustment people made to changing conditions. Settlers, travelers, and workers often had to adapt quickly because weather, geography, and distance could affect nearly every part of daily life. Survival depended less on controlling the environment and more on learning how to live within it. You understand this as you watch the driver guide the coach. He does not celebrate the storm ending before the journey's complete. He knows better. A careful traveller respects every mile. The same patience that helped everyone endure the worst hours now helps them reach safety. The passengers begin moving more freely. Shoulders relax, quiet conversations return. Someone stretches carefully, discovering just how stiff their body has become after so many hours in the same position. You almost laugh at the simple discomforts you now notice. The seat that seemed unbearable earlier has become familiar. The cold that seemed impossible has become something you learn to manage. The endless night that seemed like it would never end has become a memory forming before the journey is even finished. A surprising part of 19th century travel was how quickly people adapted emotionally to difficult circumstances. Travellers often moved between moments of discomfort and moments of appreciation. A rough road could be followed by a beautiful landscape. A freezing night could make a warm building feel like the greatest luxury in the world. You look around the coach and see that transformation happening. The passengers are still tired, but they're no longer only thinking about the storm. They're beginning to think about arrival, about food, about rest, about the simple pleasure of standing on solid ground. The driver points out something ahead, and several passengers look toward the window. The view is still unclear, but there may be signs of the next stopping point in the distance. The possibility of reaching shelter changes everything. The historical memory of frontier travel has often been shaped by questions about whether these journeys represented adventure or hardship. There is still disagreement among researchers about how people at the time understood their experiences. Some argue that travellers saw these challenges as part of a larger story of opportunity and independence. Others believe many people simply endured difficult conditions because those challenges were unavoidable parts of seeking a better life. You consider both ideas while watching the snow-covered landscape. The journey has been difficult, but difficulty is not the only thing you remember. You remember the conversations. You remember the shared warmth. You remember the patience of the driver. You remember the quiet strength of people who had every reason to complain but chose instead to continue. The storm breaking does not erase the struggle. It gives the struggle meaning. A forgotten practice among some travellers was marking difficult journeys through personal stories, journals, or letters afterward. People recorded details not only because the events were important, but because remembering hardship helped explain their own lives. A storm, a long road, or a difficult crossing could become part of a family story passed to future generations. You imagine these passengers doing the same, perhaps years later. They will mention this journey while sitting beside a warm fire. They will describe the cold, the darkness, and the strange feeling of being trapped inside a moving wooden coach while the world disappeared outside. Maybe they will remember the storm. Maybe they will remember the people. Maybe they will remember how close they came to giving up, even if they never say it aloud. The coach continues forward through the morning light. The storm has weakened, but the landscape still shows its power. Snow covers everything. The road remains difficult. The cold remains sharp. Yet the world no longer feels endless. There is a direction again. There is a destination again. You breathe more easily. The passengers settle into the final portion of the journey with renewed energy. They are not the same people who left the station hours earlier. The storm has changed their understanding of one another and of themselves. The stagecoach moves beneath the pale morning sky. The wheels turn. The horses continue. The driver guides. And ahead, beyond the snow-covered trail, waits the place where this difficult night will finally become a story of survival. The first signs of the next station appear through the pale morning light, and you feel a strange mixture of excitement and disbelief. After so many hours surrounded by snow and darkness, the idea of reaching a place with walls, warmth, and familiar human activity feels almost unreal. You lean toward the window and look carefully. At first, there is only the quiet landscape, snow-covered ground, frost-covered trees, the remains of the storm scattered across the trail. Then, slowly, shapes begin to appear, a structure in the distance, a thin line of smoke rising into the cold air, a small sign of human presence after a night where the wilderness seemed endless. The passengers notice too. The coach becomes slightly more alive. People sit up straighter. Tired faces show small signs of relief. Conversations begin again, not because anyone has forgotten the difficult hours behind them, but because everyone now has the energy to imagine what comes next. You feel the same change inside yourself. The storm that seemed impossible during the darkest hours has become something you survived. A major part of Western expansion during the late 19th century was the growth of transportation points such as stations, trading posts, and small settlements that supported travellers moving through remote areas. These places served as essential stops where people could rest, exchange information, collect supplies, and continue their journeys. You now understand why such a place mattered. The station is not simply a building. It represents safety. It represents connection. It represents a temporary escape from the challenges of the trail. The driver guides the stagecoach closer, moving carefully even though the destination is visible. Experience has taught him that the final moments of a journey still require attention. A tired traveller can make mistakes when they believe the challenge is already over. The horses slow as they approach the station. You hear the sound of movement outside, voices, footsteps, the familiar signs of people beginning another day. The door opens, and cold air rushes inside one final time. You step down from the coach and feel the frozen ground beneath your boots. Your legs feel different after so many hours sitting still. The simple act of standing feels surprisingly satisfying. You look back at the stagecoach. It appears smaller now. During the night, it felt like the entire world. It was your shelter, your meeting place, and your connection to safety. Now, sitting quietly in the morning light, it looks like an ordinary wooden vehicle again. But you know better. A forgotten part of travel culture was the importance of arrival rituals after difficult journeys. Travellers often pause to warm themselves, share news, check equipment, and reconnect with ordinary routines after reaching safety. The transition from danger to comfort was not just physical, it was emotional. You notice these small moments happening around you. The passengers stretch their arms. Someone immediately looks for a warm drink. Another person begins checking belongings to make sure nothing was lost during the storm. The older traveller smiles as if he has completed something familiar yet still meaningful. The businessman carefully protects his documents, though they seem less important now than they did when the journey began. The woman with the wrapped bundle holds it close and looks relieved. Everyone has arrived carrying the same storm in their memory. The way this journey is understood continues to inspire different interpretations among historians. Some researchers see stagecoach travel as a symbol of opportunity, movement, and the creation of new communities. Others focus on the difficulties faced by ordinary travellers and argue that these journeys reveal the harsh realities of life on the frontier. Both perspectives offer something valuable because the experience contained both hope and hardship. You think about the people you shared the coach with. Before the journey, they were strangers. During the storm, they became companions. After arrival, they will return to their separate lives. That is one of the quiet mysteries of travel. People can enter your life for only a short time and still leave a lasting impression. You may never know what happens to these passengers after today. The businessman may continue building his future. The older traveller may tell this story for years. The woman may reach her destination and create a new home. The driver may guide another coach through another storm. Their paths separate, but this night connects them. You stand near the station and breathe the cold morning air. This storm has left the landscape changed. Snow covers everything. The trail looks different. The world feels cleaner and quieter after the violence of the weather. Yet beneath the snow, the road remains. People will continue travelling it. New passengers will climb into coaches. New stories will begin. This is how history moves forward. Not only through famous moments, but through countless ordinary journeys completed by people whose names may never appear in records. You think about the lessons of the night. Preparation matters. Experience matters. Cooperation matters. Patience matters. The stagecoach journey was not won through one dramatic act. It was survived through hundreds of small decisions made correctly. A careful driver, prepared passengers, strong animals, shared encouragement. The station grows warmer as you step inside. The sound of the storm has faded into the distance. The walls block the wind. The simple comfort of a heated room feels extraordinary. You understand now why travellers valued these stopping places so deeply. After hours of uncertainty, even ordinary warmth feels like a gift. You glance back one more time at the snowy trail and remember the night behind you. The darkness, the wind, the quiet conversations, the steady movement through the blizzard. The journey is complete, but the story remains. The warmth of the station slowly returns feeling to your hands, but your mind remains on the road behind you. You sit near the window and watch the snow-covered trail where the stagecoach arrived only moments earlier. The storm has passed, but the memory of it remains strong. You can still hear the wind. You can still feel the movement of the coach. You can still remember the quiet faces of the passengers as everyone waited for morning. It is strange how quickly a frightening experience can become a meaningful memory. During the hardest hours, the journey felt endless. Now, standing safely inside a warm building, those same hours feel like a story someone might tell beside a fire. And in many ways, that is exactly what happened. Stories of difficult journeys became part of the way frontier communities remembered their own history. People shared experiences through conversations, letters, and family memories. These stories helped explain not only where people had travelled, but also what they had learned along the way. The world these travellers moved through was shaped by constant change. By the early 1880s, many parts of the American West were experiencing rapid development as settlements expanded, industries grew, and transportation networks continued to transform daily life. Yet even during this period of change, many people still depended on older methods of travel to reach places beyond the newest roads and rail connections. You think about the stagecoach sitting outside. It represents a world between two eras. It belongs to a time when travel depended on animals, weather knowledge, and personal endurance. But it also exists during a period when new technology was changing how people imagined distance and possibility. The passengers you met during the storm represent this transition. They are people moving through a changing world. They carry traditional habits and modern ambitions at the same time. They depend on old forms of transportation while hoping for new opportunities. You look back at the journey and realize that the blizzard was not only a challenge from nature, it was also a reminder of how people adapted to change. The driver adapted, the passengers adapted, the entire group adapted. A rare glimpse into frontier habits reveals that travellers often preserved memories of important journeys through small personal records. Some people kept notes, saved objects connected to their travels, or repeated stories about difficult experiences. These memories became a way of keeping the past alive, especially in communities where everyday life could change quickly. You imagine the passengers doing the same. Perhaps years from now, someone will describe this storm to a child sitting beside a warm fireplace. They will explain how the coach moved through the snow. They will describe the strangers who shared the journey. They will remember the driver who guided them through the darkness. The details may change slightly over time. That happens with all human memories. But the feeling remains. The question of how much these personal stories reflect exact events versus emotional memories is still discussed among historians. Some researchers believe travel accounts provide valuable insight into everyday experiences that official records often ignore. Others point out that memories can become shaped by later reflection, especially when people tell stories many years after an event occurred. Both views help us understand why personal history is complicated and fascinating. You consider this while watching the morning activity around the station. People move in and out. Supplies are carried. Conversations begin. The ordinary rhythm of life returns. But for you, the world feels slightly different. You have experienced the frontier not as a distant image from a painting, but as a place of sounds, sensations, and human decisions. You remember the cramped coach. You remember the cold window. You remember the smell of leather and wood. You remember the voices of strangers becoming familiar. These details are what make history feel alive. A small tradition carried across the frontier involved travellers exchanging news when they reached new locations. A person arriving from another town could bring information about weather conditions, road problems, local events, or opportunities elsewhere. In a world where messages moved slowly, travellers themselves became important connections between communities. You imagine how valuable your story would be to the next group preparing for the trail. You could tell them about the storm. You could describe the importance of preparation. You could remind them that patience matters when the weather turns against them. The lesson is not that people conquered the wilderness. The lesson is that people learned how to live within it. The storm was stronger than any individual. The cold was stronger than any single person. But together, through knowledge and cooperation, people found ways to continue. You step closer to the window again and watch the stagecoach preparing for its next task. Another journey will begin. Another group of passengers will climb inside. Another driver will take the reins. The road does not stop because one storm has ended. That is another lesson of the frontier. Life continues. People continue moving. Stories continue travelling. You feel a quiet appreciation for the passengers who shared this night with you. They were not famous explorers or legendary figures. They were ordinary people facing an extraordinary situation. And perhaps that is what makes their story worth remembering. The blizzard did not create heroes out of nothing. It revealed the courage that was already there, the patience, the kindness, the determination, the simple choice to continue forward. The story of the blizzard ride stays with you as the day moves forward. The station becomes busy again, the horses are cared for, and the stagecoach prepares for the next chapter of its endless work. But before you move on, you take one final moment to remember the night that brought you here. You remember the beginning, the quiet station, the first falling snow, the sound of the horses waiting beneath the lantern light. You remember stepping into the coach and feeling the wooden walls around you. At the time, it seemed like a simple journey, a ride from one place to another, a practical way to travel. But the storm changed everything. The journey became a lesson in patience, preparation, and human connection. You think about the people who travelled these roads throughout the 19th century. They were not living inside a romantic painting. Their world was beautiful. But it was also demanding. The same open landscapes that represented opportunity could also create isolation. The same freedom people searched for could come with difficult responsibilities. The late 19th century brought enormous changes across the United States. Communities expanded, industries developed, and transportation systems continued to reshape how people lived and moved. Yet many individuals still experienced a world where distance mattered greatly. A journey that might take hours today could require days of effort, planning, and endurance. You understand that now. The stagecoach was not simply a vehicle. It was a moving piece of everyday life. It carried workers, families, letters, supplies, and dreams. It connected people who might otherwise remain separated by enormous distances. Every passenger who climbed inside brought a different reason for travelling, and left with a different memory. You think about the driver one more time. His careful choices guided everyone through the storm. He did not defeat the weather. He respected it. He used experience, observation, and patience to move forward when conditions were difficult. You think about the passengers too, the strangers who shared warmth, the voices that filled the quiet hours, the small acts of kindness that made the cold feel less powerful. These moments are easy to overlook, but they are often the heart of history. A small tradition from frontier communities involved preserving meaningful objects from important experiences. Travelers sometimes kept items connected to journeys, family members, or significant events because physical reminders helped maintain memories. A simple object could represent an entire chapter of someone's life. You imagine that perhaps one of the passengers kept a small reminder of this night, a piece of cloth, a note, a journal entry, something ordinary that carried the memory of an extraordinary journey. Years later, that object might bring back the sound of the storm, the feeling of the coach moving through snow, the faces of people who became temporary companions. The interpretation of frontier stories remains a subject of ongoing discussion among historians. Some researchers focus on themes of independence, suggesting these journeys represent the determination of people building new lives. Others emphasize vulnerability, pointing out that many travelers depended on cooperation, luck, and circumstances beyond their control. The story of the stagecoach exists somewhere between these views. It shows strength, but it also shows the importance of support. You look once more at the trail outside. The storm has changed the landscape, but it has not erased the road. Tracks will appear again. Travelers will follow the route again. Another coach will pass through the same region, carrying another group of people with their own hopes and worries. The frontier continues, the seasons continue, the stories continue, and now this story becomes part of your own quiet collection of memories. You carry away the image of the wooden coach moving through the snow. You remember the gentle rocking beneath you. You remember the soft conversations in the darkness. You remember the moment when the first light appeared and everyone inside realized they had made it through. There is something comforting about remembering difficult journeys after they are over. The danger has passed. The uncertainty has faded. What remains is the understanding of what people can endure, not through impossible strength, not through dramatic moments, but through small choices repeated again and again. Stay calm, keep moving, help others when you can, trust the person beside you, wait for the morning. The stagecoach disappears into history, but the feeling of the journey remains. Somewhere in the frozen landscape of 1881, a coach once moved through a deadly blizzard with tired travellers inside. And those people carried on because that was what ordinary people have always done. They continued, and now, as the memory of the storm grows softer, you can let the wheels fade into the distance. The journey is finished, and the storm is now only a quiet image in your mind. You no longer feel the cold wind against the coach walls or the uncertainty of the hidden trail. Instead, you see the soft morning light resting on the snow, the peaceful station waiting ahead, and the tired travellers finally finding warmth. Let the sounds of the stagecoach become gentle, the wheels turning slowly, the horses walking calmly, the quiet voices of people who have shared one unforgettable night. The frontier is no longer a place of danger. It is a place of memory, a place where ordinary people carried hopes across difficult roads and discovered strength they may not have known they possessed. You can imagine the snow-covered trail stretching across the land, untouched and quiet. The storm has moved on. The wind has become softer. The world has returned to stillness. Tonight, you travelled through another time. You sat inside a wooden coach. You listened to strangers share stories. You felt the patience required to cross a frozen wilderness. Now, you can leave that journey behind. The horses rest. The lanterns grow dim. The last sounds of the frontier disappear into the distance. You are warm. You are safe. The story has reached its final page. So allow your thoughts to become quieter. Let the snow fall gently in your imagination. Let the old wooden coach continue along the distant trail without you, carrying its stories into history. The night is peaceful now. The road is calm. The storm has passed, and somewhere far away, beneath a quiet winter sky, the wheels keep turning softly. Rest well, sleep deeply, and let history carry you gently into dreams, sweet dreams.